Good day, in this video we are going to talk about executive clemency and give some personalities whom granted by executive clemency. Executive clemency, the power to grant pardons along with other forms of executive clemency like reprieves, permutations, and remissions of fines and forfeitures, is vested in the President of the Philippines by the Philippine Constitution. Specifically, this power is stipulated under Article 7, Section 19. It is an essential aspect of the President's executive function aimed at showing mercy and ensuring justice. Scope and limitations. While the pardoning is broad, it is not without limitations. The President cannot pardon impeach officials and cannot circumvent legislative or judicial processes. The pardon also does not extinguish civil liability or restore public offices or political rights unless specifically stated. Additionally, this power is generally not applicable to cases involving violations of election laws without the affirmative recommendation of the Commission of Elections. Types of pardons. The President can issue various types of pardons. The two most common are absolute pardons and conditional pardons. An absolute pardon absolves the individual from all the legal consequences of his or her crime and conviction. A conditional pardon, on the other hand, entails that the individual must meet certain conditions before or after release. Other forms of executive clemency. Amnesty. The act of an authority by which pardon is granted to a large of individuals, a sovereign act of oblivion or forgetfulness granted by a government, especially to a group or a person who are guilty of crimes in the past, is often conditional upon the group's return to obedience and duty in a prescribed period. We also had commutations of sentence. It is a change of decision of the court made by the chief executive by reducing the degree of penalty and inflicted upon the convict. And lastly, reprieve. The temporary stay of the execution of sentence.
Robin Carino Padilla. Robin Padilla was convicted for illegal possession of firearms in 1994. After trial, Angeles City RTC Judge David Rosette rendered judgment dated April 25, 1994, convicting petitioner of the crime charged and sentenced him to an indeterminate penalty from 17 years, 4 months, and 1 day reclusion temporal as minimum to 21 years of reclusion perpetua as maximum. Premises considered the decisions of the Court of Appeals sustaining petitioners convicted by the lower court of the crime of simple illegal possession of firearms and ammunition is affirmed, except that petitioner's indeterminate penalty is modified to 10 years, 1 day as minimum to 18 years, 8 months, and 1 day as maximum. President granted the pardon upon the recommendation of the Board of Parole, which is under the Department of Justice. He said, "I just granted pardon in favor of Robin Padilla kasi yung original pardon niya hindi sinabi yung full restoration ng political and civil rights. Therefore, he could not travel, he could not get permit to possess a gun again. I really do not know the dimension of what is meant by the deprivation of political and human rights. But one thing is that you cannot vote, you cannot travel, and therefore, he could not be issued a passport," he said. He also said, Basta yung pardon ko is full restoration of his civil and political rights, the President added. Alam mo yung crime na yan? Walang nasakatan. I mean, if it is a gun, just like the knife. If it is sharp at is potentially sharp, ilagay mo lang sa lamesa yan. Hindi mo galawin, hindi naman nakakaano yan, he said.
Ente Antonio Trillanes IV. Antonio Trillanes IV is a military detention for his involvement of two of the events, including 2003 Oakwood Mutiny and Manila Peninsula Siege. On January 5, 2011, Antonio Trillanes IV was among the first group of Filipino soldiers who applied for amnesty offered by the President Benigno S. Aquino III. The soldiers, policemen, and civilians who participated in the three attempts of bringing down the Arroyo's administration in 2023, 2026, 2006, the 2003, 2006, and 2007. 3 weeks later, the Department of Defense spokesperson Edward Batak said the first group of applicants, 38 military officers and 53 enlisted personnel who failed the papers between January 4 and 7, including Trillanes, were all granted amnesty, as there was no oppositions to their applications. On January 27, 2011, Trillanes and 94 other officers, then men, took their oath of allegiance to the Constitution before then Defense Secretary Voltaire Gazmin, which sealed the grant of amnesty.
Former Antique Governor and Representative Jovit Ramirez Jr. In May 2000, Ramirez was charged for making a false certification of full delivery of supplies. The provincial government paid suppliers CKL Enterprises in full 5.67 million for 1,354 grade school desks and 5,246 chairs in May 1997. However, auditors found that only 1,294 desks and 1,838 chairs were delivered. Ramirez was convicted of graft on December 2, 2008. He challenged the guilty verdict, but the Supreme Court affirmed his conviction on September 4, 2013. Ramirez was originally sentenced to serve 6 to 10 years in the new Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa City, and to suffer perpetual disqualification from public office. But the Sandigan Bayan Special 3rd Division considered certifications issued by doctors that might not be healthy enough to fly from the province. Ramirez suffered a stroke and paralysis and was subsequently placed under house arrest in April 2025. In 2016, Ramirez sought a presidential pardon from Benigno Aquino III, which was not granted. Aquino's successors, President Rodrigo Duterte, has granted a conditionally pardon to former Antique Governor and Rep. Jovito Ramirez Jr. But for the pardon to take effect, Ramirez has to pay the Antique provincial government 2.65 million according to an order date December 8, 2016, which was released by the Office of the President. And
Hero Onoda. Hero Onoda, shown here during World War II, was sent to the Philippines at age 23 and remained in hiding there for 29 years after the war ended, killing many islanders before finally emerging in 1974. Hero Onoda, a World War II Japanese lieutenant who hid in the Philippine jungles for 29 years, presented his sword and surrendered to President Ferdinand E. Marcos. In a televised ceremony at the Presidential Palace, Mr. Marcos gave the 52-year-old Japanese a full presidential pardon for any claims or responsibilities during the war and in the years since. The president told Mr. Onoda was welcome to stay in the country, but he is to be flown to Tokyo for a medical check. Mr. Marcos also returned the sword to Mr. Onoda, who wore his old imperial uniform. Mr. Marcos, a highly decorated guerrilla leader against the Japanese, put his arms around the wiry Japanese and said he admired him for his courage. Mr. Onoda, facing television cameras for the first time, said, "From now on, I will try my best to contribute to the development of my country and the closer cooperation of the Philippines and Japan."
Joseph Scott Pemberton. U.S. soldier Joseph Scott Pemberton convicted of killing transgender Jennifer Laude in October 2014. In a 68-page decision, Olongapo City Regional Trial Court on 74 finds Pemberton guilty beyond reasonable doubt of his homicide in Laude's death. The court finds the crime did not have the legal elements of murder, a heavier crime. Pemberton is sentenced to 6 to 12 years imprisonment. The Philippine and the U.S. governments clarify provisions of the VFA over where the Marine should be incarcerated. On 7 September 2020, 6 days after U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton filed a motion for his release under good conduct time allowance, President Duterte granted him absolute pardon, extinguishing all of his criminal liabilities without condition. Correct me if I'm wrong, at ito ang tingin ko sa kaso. I have not treated Pemberton fairly, so nirelease ko, pardon, says Duterte in televised address. Pemberton has only served 5 years and 8 months of his prison sentence of 6 to 10 years for killing Laude in 2014. His motion for release is the first time that the CTA is being claimed by U.S. soldier while in solitary confinement and not serving his jail term, and the new beloved prison accordance with the Visiting Forces Agreement, a mutual defense treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines.